All right, good morning and welcome to Just Daf It, the one and only Daf It share with Ben Seal Lang. We are learning Yevamos Daf 35, Daf Lamed Hey. We're going to be finishing the third parak. Third parak we're finishing today. Arguably, probably the hardest parak in Mesachas Yevamos, so it's great that we finished it. Moving on, Mesachas Yevamos, it gets a little easier from here. Great news for those people who are struggling up until now. Today we're going to talk about a couple different things. We're going to talk about mainly the thing about waiting. There's a general halacha that if you want to marry a woman who was previously married to somebody else, or she was raped by somebody else, you might have to wait 3 months before that. You can't marry her right away. It's machlokes tanoim how long you have to wait for. Could you marry a woman right away after she's married to somebody else? These are discussions the Gemara here and the Gemara in the fourth paragraph will talk about really relevant halachas, right? Your wife dies, or you want to marry a new woman or something like that, or you're a first time marrying, you want to marry a woman who was married previously, or she's in a relationship previously. Let's say she was converted or whatever. You have to wait 3 months or not. That's discussion. The reason for 3 months, obviously, is to distinguish if you can have a child after 7 months with the new husband. You want to make sure you know it's from your new husband and not from the old husband, which would have relevance for Yibum and Chalitza. We're going to talk about at the beginning of the fourth paragraph. We're starting the fourth paragraph today. All right, let's get right into it. The Gemara, the bottom of Lamed Dalam and Beis, we left off sort of in the middle. Kiyasa Ravin, about 10, 11 lines from the bottom. Kiyasa Ravin, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Shashasach Arbaila Eser Shanim, V'niseis Shuva Ena Yoledes. Any woman who her husband died, or she got divorced, she waited 10 years, and she got remarried, she's not able to have children anymore. The Gemara says a fact, she can't have children anymore. This is only if she didn't plan on getting remarried. I guess if you don't plan on getting remarried, your womb dries up or whatever. But if she had in mind, then even after 10 years, she'd become pregnant from her second husband. Rava said to the daughter of Chisda, who was his wife, she was previously married to another rabbi, she got married to him after 10 years of the death of Rami Barchama. Amrale, Anadati Allah Havai. She said, I had you in mind. Interesting, the article brings a story of Basra, the daughter of Rav Chisda. She was married to both Rami Barchama first and then Rava second. Originally, Rava and Rami Barchama were students of Rav Chisda, and he brought his daughter. He asked the daughter, who do you want to marry? He gave her the choice. Normally, men have the choice. Here, the woman had the choice because she was the daughter of the Rosh Hashiva. So she chose both of them, she said. And it turned out she was right. She married both of them. The problem over here was that she had a kid from Rav Chisda, from Rava, afterwards. So he said, I planned to get remarried to you originally. A woman came from Yosef. Amrlo, Rebbe, Ana Shahisiach Arbaile Eser Shanim. I waited 10 years after my husband died, and I remarried, and I had a child. Amrle beat the out to see lots of Rechamim. Don't articles cast aspersions. Don't say bad things about the Chacham. Said Amrle Nachman. She admitted no. In the interim, that 10-year period, she did have relations with a non-Jew, so therefore she kept her rechem, her womb, her uterus fresh. Amar Shmuel of Kulin Srichos Lahamdin Shlosh Chadashim. Shmuel makes a statement, and he says all women in general, when they get remarried, they have to wait 3 months before getting remarried in order to distinguish if they have a child, whose child it is. Except for a convert and a woman who gets freed while they're minors. If you marry a woman who's a minor, Bas Yisrael, she was previously married, you have to wait Gimel Chadashim, even though it's not likely she's going to become pregnant from the first husband. Uvamai. Well, how did she get separated from her first husband? Even Miyun if she refused her husband, she was married Darabanan from her mother or father, Amar Shmuel, Lo Baya, and Shmuel saying she doesn't need to wait 3 months, we beget, V'hamra Shmuel Chadazimna. If you're talking about that she got divorced from her husband, gave her a get, technically, right, you can give her a get from, she married Midal Raisa, the father of Mekad al Kedushin for his daughter. So the Raisa is married, she needs to get Midal Raisa. Hamar Shmuel Chadazimna. Hamar Shmuel, Bo in a Sricha Lahamda Shlosh Chadash. She does Miyun. The Rabbanan one goes there. Now, something like that, Sricha Lahamda Shlosh Chadashim. The reason they did this by Ektana, even though Ektana really can't have children, is because there goes there for a Gedola that gets a get. Miyun, there's not Miyun by a Gedola, but there is a get by a Gedola, and therefore if you don't need a get, if you don't need to wait for Ektana, you might not necessitate waiting for a Gedola, where there really is a concern. You don't know who the child is. Eleb is nus. Where it says Shmuel was talking about if she was mezana, a woman was mezana out of wedlock, either beratzon or ba'ona, she was raped or she did it willingly. The Gazra Rabbanan, Shmuel holds at the top of Lamed Hem and Aleph. The Gazra Rabbanan Ktana Mishum Gedola. There goes there on a Ktana who, even if she can't become pregnant, there's no reason to wait for her because of a Gedola who's mezana. So we make a Gezeira, Ktana for a Gedola, if they were minors that can't have children, our Mishnah says they switch wives in our Mishnah. Lamed Gimel. We return them right away. If they're Gdolos, we wait 3 Chadashim. If they're Ktanos, then we return them Miyad. Amar of Gidam Arav, Hora Sha'isa. The ruling our Mishnah was a unique ruling for something that happened one time. So, the Gemara says, Michal da Havai. It sounds like you're saying the Mishnah means to say that it was talking about a specific case that happened. It's talking about a rule. It wasn't talking about Horasha. Ella ki Horasha. He meant to say it's like a Horasha. The ruling of the Mishnah is like a Horasha. What he meant to say, it's not shchiyah. It's not commonplace to switch wives by accident, like the Gemara says. Therefore, they didn't make a Gezeira. Lishnach Rina, a different way of saying it. I'm the Amar Shmuel. Kulon Tzrich Zahad Shlosh Chadash Chutz Megiras B'Shucheres Gedola. All women who were previously married have to wait 3 months before they remarry, except for a convert and a Mishucheres, a woman, a Shifcha Knayis, who was freed. Aval Ktana Bas Yisrael Ein Tzrich Lahamdin Gimel Chadashim. But a Ktana who's Yisrael doesn't have to wait Gimel Chadashim. B'mai. So what is he talking about? Even Miyun Amar Shmuel Chadazimna. Even Gerak Amar Shmuel the Baya. Really, Miyun Shmuel said, like we saw before, he says she doesn't have to wait. If it's we know Shmuel says you have to wait. Amar Shmuel Mina Bo and Tzrich Lahamdin Shlosh Chadashim. Nothing like that. Tzrich Lahamdin Shlosh Chadashim. Where it goes there by a Ktana Atu Agdola. So a Ktana does not wait. Ela Biznus. Further Shmuel is we talking about Znus. Znus Ktana Lo Shchiach. Then Znus is not Shchiach by Ektana, so therefore this version of Shmuel is saying that Ektana who is Mizana wouldn't have to wait 3 months as opposed to the first version of Shmuel. Because it's not Shchiach, it's not commonplace, so they didn't make a Gzeira, Ektana Atuk Dol. The Gemara says, Gioras B'Shucheres, the Shchiach who is Nus Ligzor. A Giores, right, a convert, when she's a Ktana, or a Mishucheres, she was a slave woman, right? Anyone knows about human trafficking, this is a business in the world, underworld, black market. It happens very frequently. It's not talked about so much, but human trafficking basically is people sell usually young women as slaves, sometimes to work for them, sometimes to be their mistress. So human trafficking is very common, and when they're Gioras, when they're non-Jewish, or the Mishucheres, they're Shivcha, a lot of times there's Nus, they're engaged in sexual relations, even when they're Ktana. So it is Shchiach. So the Gemara says, Huda Amar, so the Gemara fixes Shmuel. Huda Amar Rabbi Yossi. Shmuel actually holds like Rabbi Yossi. The Sanya Gioras, Vashriya, Shivcha, Sheniftu. When she's Gair, when Shtachru, Strichas, Ahadu, Gimel Chadashim, Diva Rabbi Yehuda. So Machalok Tanai, Rabbi Yehuda says, if they're a Gedola and they're a convert, or they're freed, or they're taken ransom and they're freed, right? Normally a woman's taken ransom, she's raped a lot of times. Rabbi Yossi Matil Ares Lanas and Miyad. Rabbi Yossi is not. It doesn't have a problem with this. We'll see exactly why Rabbi Yossi is so makel over here. He says you could be ma'aresh le'nasim miyad. You could get mekudeshet and marry right away. I'm a rabbi. My time with Rabbi Yossi. What's the reason Rabbi Yossi kasavar? Isha mizana mishameshes b'moch kadeshes saber. The reason being is that a woman who's going to convert or who's going to be freed, right? She carries around with her a sponge in order to take out the semen, even if she is raped or she is violated. She'll take out the semen, and therefore she won't become pregnant. When it's a convert, she already planned. You don't just convert one day. She planned for a couple months of getting divorced, not get divorced, converting to Judaism. So therefore, since she planned for a long time to convert to Judaism, so therefore she obviously doesn't want to become impregnated from a non-Jew, because then when she becomes Jewish, she's not going to know whether the kid was Nizra b'Kedusha, came from a Jewish father or not from a Jewish father. She wants to know these things. She's coming from. So she's going to carry around the moch. She's going to carry around a sponge with her. Shvuya v'shivcha nami d'sham marayo mindarin avshayu. A shvuya and a shivcha, a woman who's taken captive, ransom, or shivcha, or a slave woman, they probably heard for months leading up to this that their owners are anticipating on freeing them. So therefore, they're going to want to make sure that they don't become pregnant from a non-Jew. Right? He included mishuchreres. Mishuchreres, a woman who becomes freed as a slave woman. You become freed as a slave woman if he decides to free you. Or if he knocks out your tooth or your eye or any one, the Gemara Kedushin says any one Roshei Varim, 24 Roshei Varim, he knocks out one of those, he frees you. Automatically has to free you. That she didn't know about, she didn't know it was coming. He'll tell you in that case, Shena Ayin, he's Moda, where they don't know he's Moda. If she's raped or she's seduced, so Yehuda says she has to wait 3 months. Rabbi Yossi matlar even matters in these cases where she obviously has no idea she's raped. She has no idea that it's coming. She can't carry around a sponge with her, and still he's makel. So what's the reason? Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yossi holds a woman who's mezana, even though she doesn't have a sponge with her to take out the semen, she'll turn over after the bia in order to let the semen flow out of her body so it won't impregnate her. Ve'ida, what does Rabbi Yehuda hold? He's worried that even though they will try to do it. In Znus, or a case where they don't want to have bia, most of these cases the woman doesn't want to have sex with these people. So therefore, she'll try to turn over, but she won't be successful, and some of the semen will be left in there, and there's a chance she'll become pregnant. This will be the discussion of Iyun Ben Sion. We're going to talk about this machlokas between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. What is really the reasoning of Rabbi Yossi over here? Because again, the case that we're not talking about is Shein Va'ayin, where the master has to free her because he knocked out a tooth or eye of hers. In that case, is it so pasha that she's going to want to turn over? Meaning he doesn't know that she's freeing her, right? She's going to be freed tomorrow because he's going to knock out her Shein Va'ayin. But yesterday, she wanted to have avodim. She didn't know. In the case of someone rapes her, so she doesn't want to have a child that's out of wedlock, or she wants to make sure she doesn't become pregnant. But a shifcha, who says she doesn't want to make sure she doesn't become pregnant? This is Tosfos Yeshanim's question on Rashi. I'm going to try to explain the machlokas in Rashi and Tosfos Yeshanim. Get back to that. Explain Rabbi Yossi Shita really well. The Gemara continues. Imayu kohanos. The Mishnah on Lamed Gimel says if they are kohanos, if they were female kohanim, then they're pasal min truma if they engaged in a switch. Because the kohanos in Israelis low, a kohanis yes, but if the Israelis low, why should it make a difference if they are the daughters of kohanim or not? They're married to a kahuna, to a kohen. So the Gemara fixes it, not that they were the daughters of kohanim, they were actually the wives of kohanim. So the Gemara says, "Neshei kohanim mean Neshei Yisraelim lo." Only for the wives of kohanim, the wives of Yisrael. We know Rav Amar, Rav Milsa, Amar La Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes taught us the following thing. Vanarinu, Hamilsa Amar Rav Sheshes. Vanarinu le'enim mastisin. Amram was taught by Rav Sheshes. He explained from a Mishnah, a woman who was raped, she's married to the Israelis, even though she's mutter her husband, it passes over the guna, even after her husband dies or he divorces her. She can't marry a Kohen, she becomes a Zona. Amarava Hakigamar. This is what I mean to say. Mayu Kahanos Nesuos Israel. They were daughters of Kohen. They are married to Israel. Nifslu min Ashuma Demeina Shayu. They become possible even if their husband's divorced and they can't go ahead back to their father's house and eat truma. I think Mina Arison, if they only get them engaged, normally you can return to your father's house if the husband dies. Here, they can't because they became possible min Truma. They were nivelis to someone who wasn't their husband, so they became a Zona. And they're possible from eating truma. Hadron alach arba achen. We finished the third pair. Congratulations. Yeah. All right. Let's start the Mishnah on Lamed Ham with Beis Perak HaCholitz. The Mishnah says HaCholitz Yevimto v'nimseis milberes. He does chalitza to his Yevama. And what happened? He found out afterwards, right? Normally, we're going to learn that you have to wait 3 months, right? After your brother dies, right? He leaves over the Yevama. You have to wait 3 months to make sure, right? Because if she's pregnant, she had children, there's no mitzvah of Yevama Chalitza, there's actually an Isra of Kares. There's no mitzvah, there's no Zika. If it's children, if there is children, there's no mitzvah of Yevama Chalitza, you have to do Yevama Chalitza. So, what would be the case if he violated this precept of the Rabbanim and he went ahead and did Chalitza or Yivam within this 3 month window? So now he's supposed to give him, though he did Chalitza, but it's Moberes, and then he finds out, oh, she's pregnant, V'yalda, and she gives birth. If the Vlad is a Kayama, meaning it lasts for 30 days. If the baby lives till 30 days old, it's considered a real child. It's considered a living child. Muhu mutter b'krova sav, he mutaras b'krova, v'lo pasu min hakahuna. So the Chalitza he did is meaningless, the Mishnah says, because it's like the Yavam had a child, so there's no construct, there's no Zika, there's no construct of Yibum Chalitza over there. The Chalitza he did was meaningless, there was no Chiyah to do Chalitza, so therefore the Chalitza is meaningless. If the Chalitza was not meaningless, he did a Chalitza, so just like you can't marry the Krovim, you give a get to a woman, you can't marry her mother, sister, or daughter, or you can't marry the Krovim. So Midrabanan, they also made a takana, if you need a chalitza, you did a chalitza, you can't marry that woman's mother, sister, or daughter. But if the chalitza wasn't necessary, so then you could. And she could also marry his krovim. And he didn't pass her minakahuna, he didn't pass her minakahuna. Chalutza is psula minakahuna. Like we learn Midrabanan, that she's like a grusha, she's possible from the kahuna. So here she's not called a chalutza, he didn't do a chalitza. The child doesn't live, he doesn't make it. Who asur b'krova sevi asur b'krova pasul min hakahuna, then it is a valid chalitza because it was a construct of yibum, and therefore it's a real chalitza and she's pasul min hakahuna, and there's an isra in the krov. Makonis yevimto v'nimses milber. Let's say instead of doing chalitza, he was boel his yevama. He took his yevama too early. V'nimses milberes, and now what he finds out his yevama, his wife now is milberes v'yalda, and she gives birth. If the child lives 30 days yotzi, he has to get rid of this woman because we're not sure if he's allowed to be married to this woman, right? If the child is his own child, right? We don't know whose child it is within only 3 months. If it's his own child, obviously he can stay married to her, but it's a suffix, maybe it's a child of the Yavam, in which case there's no mitzvah of Yibum. There's an sort of Eisha Sa'ach, and it's a violation of Kares, and the child be a mamzer. He's not going to be a mamzer, but he'd have to be motzi because he's married to Eishasach, which is an erva. The chayavin b'korban, he has to bring a korban chatas. He violated Isser Kares. Right? We assume that since she went 3 months, the child belongs to the husband. It's not really a suffix. The child definitely belongs to the previous husband, the deceased brother. If the child doesn't live Yikayim, then he can remain married to her because, again, it's a construct for Yibam. There's no Isra Veshasach because the mitzvah of Yibam. Safek min Tishal Rishon, Safek min Shiva La'achron. Let's say he gets married at exactly the 3 month point or a little before, where it's really a suffix, where it's not for sure one way or the other. It can either be his child and it's going to be born in 7 months, or it could be a 9 month child and belong to the other one. Maybe get married after 2 months Yotzi, so in that case where it's a suffix, a real suffix midaraisa, so he has to be motzir, because it's a suffix kares, a suffix daraisa, a vlad kosher. The child is not a mamzer, because in Manav Shach, it doesn't make a difference, right? If the child was really the first brother's child, right? It was from the deceased brother's child, so the child was born, there was nothing wrong, he was born from a mother and father that were allowed to be married. And if it's his child, the Yevamos child, so then obviously it was a case that his brother didn't have children, so it was mitzvah of Yibum, so the Monajach is kosher. The only question is whether he married Eishes Ach or not. He did, it's in a violation of Kari. So therefore, anytime you're chayav achata specific, you bring a korban called an asham toloi. An asham toloi, a little different type of korban, because the suffix kares. Where it says itmar, hacholitz lemu beres v'pila. Similar case to our Mishnah. He does chalitza to a pregnant woman, right? She's pregnant. His brother, right? His brother who died left the wife who was pregnant. V'pila. So we know it's from the first brother. He does chalitza to her. And then what happens to her? What happens to her is that she has a miscarriage. Rabbi Yochanan says, right, he never had a child. So l'mafreya, retroactively, we see that it was a mitzvah of Yibum, it was a construct of Yibum, it was a mitzvah of Yibum. So Rabbi Yochanan says it's a valid chalitza. It was a construct of Yibum. It's a valid chalitza. It was the invalid chalitza because at the time you did chalitza, she was muberes. So if she's muberes, that means that your brother is going to have a child. In which case, there's no mitzvah chalitza and a Yibum. So therefore, when she's mepila and then she finds out that she needs chalitza, you need a new chalitza. He says the chalitza you do to a pregnant lady, or the bia you do that you want to do for Yibum, is considered a bia and it's considered a chalitza. She would need a new chalitza. It's not, doesn't count. Whereas what's a machlokes? You might say makrova, you say masvaril. You could say it's machlokes how you interpret a pasuk, or it's a machlokes in reasoning, rationale. You might say masvara or Yochanan Savar Yavo Eliyahu V'Yomer Dahadi Abram Apulei Mapla. If Eliyahu is going to come and tell you, right, I can tell you the future. He'll say the fact that she's pregnant is insignificant because she's going to give a miscarriage. She's going to have a miscarriage. Mila Bas Chalitza Yibum. Of course, right now, even though she's pregnant, you know that it's a valid Chalitza in Yibum because your brother never had children. Hashanami the Gali Milsa Mafreya. So here also we don't know, but it happened that she has a miscarriage after the Yibum Chalitza. It's valid. He says we don't say retroactively, look back, that it's like she was never pregnant. Alternatively, it's a pasuk Yochanan Savar Bain Ein Lo. Your brother doesn't have a child. Does he have a child? No, she was miscarriage. So therefore, the Yibum Chalitza while she was pregnant is valid. Ain means not, could also be spelled on. The extra yud is to teach you a different word, ayin alav, to investigate the matter that even if she at the end doesn't have a child, but she was about to have a child, she was pregnant, so therefore it's considered like your brother had children at that point. And then obviously when she does has a miscarriage, then it goes back to the construct. The Mishnah says, "Ein avad shal kayama, who also bekrova, he also bekrova, he also bekrova, psul min hakuna." If the child ends up dying, so there's an isser in the krova because the chalitza was valid. Psul min hakuna, b'sham l'didi damina chalitza m'berish sham chalitza mishum haki pasta. Because it said the chalitza, right? The chalitza muberes, if she's pregnant, is a good chalitza. So here also, he did chalitza when is even better. She actually had a child. The child just didn't live 30 days. So you see the chalitza is valid at that point. It passes from the kahuna. Meaning that she's considered a chalitza, and she's also the kohanim. According to Yurish, if while she's pregnant, the chalitza is not invalid. Certainly, if she had a child, it's not valid. Am I passing in kahuna? Why do you pass in the kahuna? It's just a chumrah that the Rabbanon Machmer is a gzeira, because they're going to think, people are going to say, they're going to say it's mutter. Chalutza is normally muteris. They're not going to know about the fact that the child died. They're not going to know the fact that it wasn't a real chalitza. So they're going to think that she is a chalutza. They're not going to know the fact that she was muberes and then she had a child and the child died. They're not going to know about those facts, so they're going to see a chalitza. And if we'd matter her and say that it's not a chalitza because Reish Lakish holds that the chalitza at that time was invalid, then we'll come to matter a chalitza to the Kohanim when it's a real chalitza. Ikad the Amri, alternatively, Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan, in Avlad Shach Yamu Asur B'Krov Aseh, Asur B'Krov, Pasam and Aguna, Bishlam L'Jidi. Reish Lakish asked the other way. I mean, the chalitza is mubarak toshma chalitza. If the chalitza is done while she's pregnant, not a chalitza, and certainly if they have a child, not a chalitza. Hani the Kasani Pasam and Aguna l'chumra. Like I just explained, they made a chumra so we shouldn't make a mistake that say chalutzas are mutaris to the kohen. It didn't say the stronger thing of saying a definitive ruling on a daraisa level that she doesn't need chalitza. The chalitza was a valid chalitza. According to Rabbi Yochanan, it should have said instead it's just saying pasam and aguna, which can only be a chomer d'rabbanan. Say the stronger thing that it was a real chalitza and it was valid, and you don't need any more chalitza. Amar Lei, Yochanan responded, you're right. The idea of Tana Reisha lo pasal, Tana not a seifa pasal, because the beginning of the Mishnah talked about it, said lo pasla. It's talking about the opposite case, where the child actually lived. So lo pasla. So therefore, it said the word pasla, just congruence in the Mishnah, but it wasn't meant to actually. It could have said the bigger chiddush. Esive Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Yochanan asked Reish Lakish from the Mishnah, if the child doesn't live, he can remain married. If we do chalitza or bia, right, when she's pregnant, and certainly when she has a child, that's why it says you're allowed to remain married there. It says it's not worth anything if she's muberes. It has to be. He has to actually do another. Yikayim means that the yibum was effective, and you can remain married to her. According to the Shlakish, you have to go ahead and do another bia because your yibum was ineffective the first time because she was pregnant or she had a child that was not ben chayama. Whereas my yikayim yachzor v'yival yikayim. The losagi. That's what yikayim means. Reish Lakish says yikayim means that he has to keep her. He has to do a yibum because what he did was not enough. Ikad Amri. Alternatively, another way of saying this discussion. Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. We have Reish Lakish asked on Rabbi Yochanan. What was his question? Ein avad shalcha yama. Mishnah says if the lad doesn't live yikayim, he can remain married. It's not effective. He has to do something. He has to do chalitza or yibum. He has to do yikayim. He has to do a bia. Yikayim means he has to do something. According to you, he's fully married already to her with the original bia. So now it should mention in the Mishnah, say it's stronger, saying he could even get rid of her again. She's his wife. He could keep her, or he could even get rid of her with a get. So the Gemara says, because the Reisha, the first case, talked about Yotzi, he has to get rid of her. The Seifa says, where the child dies, then he can keep her around. But really, it could have said Yikayim or no saying law get. Okay, we'll stop here. I hope you enjoyed today's share. Stick around for Enoch Ben Sion, where we talk about this idea of Rabbi Yossi's Shita, about if there's nus, or what is this in Rabbi Yossi's Shita that allows you to remarry, even though there's a chashash, there's a concern that it might be the previous husband's child. We get confused, who's the father? Who is your daddy? We don't know who's your daddy. Rabbi Yossi's not so concerned about this. Why not? We'll get into that Enoch Ben Sion coming up right now.